But what I am going to do is I'm going to go into new deck, and we are going to build a deck together. This is going to be a brew. It's going to be heavily inspired by ramp decks that I've seen in Standard that have been played to great success. There is a ramp player by the name of Chris Patello who is an excellent Magic player. He does have a Twitch channel, and I've learned a lot from him. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty experienced Magic player, and I am learning a lot just watching this guy. So, if you're looking for like really good Magic content, check that guy out. A lot of the inspiration behind this deck comes from watching his decks, just do work. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be building a ramp deck. Sheldon's already saying Brass's Bounty. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. Maybe sideboard. A lot of these cards I don't remember the name of because I haven't played them, so I am gonna have to go back to Mana Stack every now and again. Or I'm sorry, go back to magic.wizards.com every now and again. But one of the cards that's a staple, the name of the guy is Chris Patello, and his Twitch channel is Chris Patello, so very easy to find him. But he does do a lot of high quality Magic content. And I get bored watching Magic Online. I generally don't enjoy to watch it, but this guy makes it entertaining because he actually goes through every decision, and that's one thing. It's not a rant, so to say, but there's people that'll say they don't like watching Magic Online, but I think it's more of who do you like to watch, right? Like, I can say that I like watching Magic Duels, but if I watch someone who has no cards and no experience with the game, and they have like a broken microphone, and the quality is like 480p, then yeah, I'm probably not gonna like watching it, even though I might say that I like watching Magic Duels. And I think the same goes for Magic Online. I know it gets a bad rep, but if you have good enough content, if you have good commentary, if you're just an interesting guy, then you can still make that game entertaining as hell. And that's kind of how I feel. It's not really a rant so much as a non-rant. But I'm going to get into the deck tech now. Hour of Promise is an absolute staple in this deck tech. You need to be ramping for this to work, because this is an expensive deck. You need a lot of mana for it to really thrive, and Hour of Promise is a 4 of for that reason. We're going to have a lot of hours in here. Hour of Devastation, another hour that I need to use. I'm not calling Shaolin out, no. I think Shaolin is a very entertaining MTGO streamer. If I wouldn't be subbed to him if I didn't. So don't even try to make me fire shots at Shaolin. Wow, Eugenides just putting words in my mouth, trying to create a divide between the monks and ninjas, as if there wasn't already one. Monks and ninjas, they don't get along. We have many differences between our Renegade maps and our other cards. Alright, anyway. I'm getting super derailed. Why don't I see Hour of Devastation? Did I type it wrong? Let's see. Oh, the 480p no mic dual streamer you were describing? Yeah. Why am I not seeing this card? Is it in red? Alright. I'll try to find it. Did I type something wrong? Did I spell Hour of Devastation wrong? Why don't I see it? I'm so... Oh, it's right here. Okay. For some reason, I just couldn't find the card. This is a staple. It's a 4 of. It's the best sweeper we're going to have access to. As far as dealing with planeswalkers, for sure. You can argue with that Star of Extinction is better, but Star of Extinction requires 7 mana. This requires 5. It's the only reason. The main reason I subscribe to Shaolin, I think he just has really entertaining commentary. And I'm trying not to get derailed and turn this into I Love Shaolin stream. But yeah, that guy, you do some good rants, and I don't know, I just really like the commentary. It's just interesting, you know? But don't derail me, Shard. I'm not trying to do an I Love Shaolin stream. As much as I love Shaolin, this is not an I Love Shaolin stream, okay? Thanks, no problem, man. I am getting derailed. Come on, I gotta build a deck here, guys. Alright. Anyway, Gift of Paradise, this is a 4 of. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a lot of mana, if you couldn't already tell that. And there are, I believe, 4 cards that do this. There's a card from Amonkhet that I'm going to go to. Multicolored. See if I can find it. Spring to Mind. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to start going off the deep end. You guys have seen the ramp portion. Let's go off the deep end. Zakama. This is a good card to ramp into. Get in here. What else? Sunbird's Invocation. This card helps. There's more cards that I'm going to ramp into, and I'm just trying to remember the name of them. Approach of the Second Suns. I told you guys I was building a ramp deck. Did I not say I was building a ramp deck? That's a 4 of. Approach of the Second Suns is a 4 of. Carnage Tyrant. Let's get a Carnage Tyrant in here. You know what? Let's get 4 Carnage Tyrants in here. This is a ramp deck. We're trying to get bombs out. And we want our Sunbird's Invocation to be an absolute beast. Immortal Sun. Get in here. We want 1 Immortal Sun. What am I missing now? Settle the Wreckage. I need to stay alive. Settle, get in here. I believe there's some other 4 mana spells that I might need. I was building this deck last night, and I'm trying to remember what else goes in it. Treasure Map, I think I need to have something. So I could argue that I could run Cut to Ribbons, and I have all the mana in the world to make it work, but I do want to hit land drops, so I'm not going to go for Cut to Ribbons because of that, even though my Gift of Paradise could make this work. So let's get Treasure Map. Okay, how many cards am I at? 34. I need to add lands. I remembered every card of the deck that I built yesterday. That makes me feel proud. This is the deck. You are not going to be playing many things on turn 2. You're going to really want to play a Gift of Paradise or a Spring on turn 3. You're really going to want to hold Settle on turn 4. You need to get to 5 mana. You need all 26 lands. Every land's important. But once you get there, oh baby. Your Hour of Devastations, they don't kill your Carnage Tyrants. They do kill your zombies from Hour of Promise, but they don't kill your Carnage Tyrants. I'd put Baffling End. That's too cheap. Do I want cheap cards for my Sunbird's Invocation? I have Treasure Map. I have Life Gain, right? I got Life Gain on turn 3. I've got Settle on turn 4. I've got Hour of Devastation on turn 4. I've got Approach on turn 6. Let me get into the into the mana. And I wouldn't be advocating this deck unless I saw it win a bunch yesterday. And I know it looks crazy, but the list that this guy was running, it didn't have 2-drops in it other than like Treasure Map, and I think that's right. As crazy as it sounds. If I had to make cuts for this deck, if it does indeed not work, I can always throw in more cuts or something, you know? And then cut can work alongside all of the mana that you're getting. But you're trying to get a ton of mana out, right? You're trying to hit these hours and settles as soon as you can. The one problem with this is I only have 4 sweepers. I don't have 7 sweepers like he had. It didn't make the cut. I will show you guys some crazy lands though. Okay. So we don't have access to a desert in Amonkhet. Or no, it's Hour of Dev, and I'm forgetting the name of it. It's going to be banned, or it might not be banned. If it's not banned, then you're going to be running. You're going to be running Ramunap Ruins if we can. Uh, if not, then you're going to just have to use Desert of the Fervent. This is a desert deck. Hashra Basis, that's a 1 of. Ipnu Rivulet, that's a 1 of. Scavenger Grounds, that's a 1 of. And the last one is Shafet Dunes. And the reason that you're running these is that you're able to search for mana with your Hour of Promise. The blue land... That's true. I don't need... Well, I kind of like the blue lands. Because let me show you why. First of all, I am running Mind. Mind is a card that I want to take advantage of. It gives me card draw once the game starts going on. Additionally, I can mill myself. After casting Approach to the Second Suns, I can put the top 4 cards of my own library into my graveyard and essentially get my approach out a little bit faster. And again, this is not from my own brain. I am heavily influenced by Chris Patello's deck that he showed, and I'm sort of trying to make an arena version of it because I think this guy is not well known, and I really want to try and build something that sort of resembles a good ramp deck. And the fact that you can mill yourself, you can also just start milling your opponent. Say the game goes on a long time. You can mill yourself to try and hit a spring. Like, say you're in top deck mode and you need to draw cards, you could just use Ipnu Rivulet to mill yourself, and if you're able to hit a Mind, you just get to draw 2 cards. Ipnu Rivulet is actually a really good card for this deck, and I know it doesn't look like it, but it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. And that is why you have these deserts. So that your Hour of Promise can just fetch them. You know what else Hour of Promise can fetch? Your Hour of Promise can fetch Arch of Araska. You can have a 1 of Arch of Araska. That Hour of Promise just searches your entire library for it. It gets any land. Hour of Promise gets any land in your deck. So essentially, you Hour of Promise, and whatever mana you're missing, you can just get the desert version of it and have this little desert economy where you can use Ipnu Rivulet or you can use Scavenger Grounds. And if we get Ramunap Ruins, then obviously we'll get Ramunap Ruins, and we can use that as well for a little bit of extra burn. If we don't, then just use Desert of the Fervent instead. And they all come in untapped. You do have to pay life for them, but they come in untapped, so it's not like they're slow lands if you just draw them. And now we need to just add in a bunch of basics. And I don't think there's going to be too many of them. So you want to have 1 island, because the island splash is very low, but you do need to have 2 sources of blue sometimes for spring. And I know there's Gift of Paradise, which can do a good job for that. But say you have your spring and you search for a land, maybe you do want to grab a blue. You never know. So I'm going to add 1 copy. Oops. There we go. Green is the most important color for this deck. Green is turn 3. Everything on turn 3 relies on forests, so I think you're going to need a couple more forests than anything else for your basics. Let's just sort by Ixalan so I don't have to scroll through all that every turn. Every turn. I'm talking in magic lingo. So I think like 4 forests actually is a good idea. Because you do need to hit these Gift of Paradises. They're very important. And that's why Treasure Map is also there, so that you can start getting your scries in. And by the way, I know I said I have 4 sweepers, but Zakama is kind of a sweeper. And because of the amount of ramp that I'm doing, I don't think it's unheard of where I can just play Zakama and sweep up a bunch of creatures. Additionally, Carnage Tyrant can also just start blocking. And because I have a lot of life gain, because I have Gift of Paradise, because I have Approach of the Second Sun, I think that I might be able to pivot my life total high enough where it actually works. Because they're going to be trying to put a lot of pressure on my life total, and if I'm just able to pivot high enough, I think it could be okay. And this is going to require testing. This is all theory right now. And sometimes theories are wrong. But based on what I saw on Twitch yesterday, with the lack of 2-drops available in the deck that I saw and still going like 60 to 70%, I think he might be onto something, and I want to try it. Okay. Do I want planes? Maybe like 2 planes, or 1. I need a planes, at least 1 to fetch with Spring. Similarly, I need at least 1 mountain to fetch with Spring. And there's going to be a lot of 4-ofs now, which is going to require me to remember what certain land cards are called. So let's go to land. Sun Petal Grove and Rootbound Crag, those are both 4-ofs. You want to really have efficient mana. You want to have your Sun Petal Groves, as I said, and this is a very rare intensive deck, so it could just be too tough to make as far as the rares are concerned. But we're just talking theory. But yeah, you do have a bunch of rare lands to try and, make sure that you get each turn untapped if possible. And I think you want some cycling lands. One thing about this deck is that your Hour of Promise, you can actually just fetch up all of the regular lands, and then every time you top deck a cycling land, you get to draw a card. So when you Hour of Promise, you're not supposed to get the cycling lands first. You're supposed to just wait on those, and that doesn't apply to every matchup. Sometimes you might just want to get tapped lands out of the way, but cycling lands are very important for this deck, so I am going to try and find some of the dual land cycle lands. I think they are from, I guess they're from Amonkhet. So what would the cycle land that I want? It would probably be Scattered Grove and Sheltered Thicket. So let's put those in. And let's take Ixalan off of the set, because this is a card from Amonkhet. Okay, we're starting to get there. So you have your 1 Arch, you have your Desert Economy, you have a ton of good rare lands. I'm at 63 though, so I do need to make some cuts regarding land. And that's why I only have a lot of 1-ofs for my mountains, plains, and islands, because I do have to make some cuts. And I think I just need to trim on the cycle lands a little bit, because these are tapped lands. I think more often than not, I'm going to want red than I'm going to want white, and that's not always going to be the case. But it has to be the cycle lands that I throw out. So let's get that Sun Petal Grove back in there, which I did take out by accident. Ugh, I don't want that Sun Petal Grove. I want the Ixalan Sun Petal Grove. There we go. Okay, so 3 Sheltered Thickets, 3 Scattered Groves. I think I want red and green more than I want green and white. So let's just take out 1 more Scattered Groves, and I think that's basically what the deck would look like. If Shaolin does prove to be right, where you need more 2-drops, then you could make cuts. Like, I think you could take Immortal Sun out. But here's the thing. When you get the Sunbird's Invocation out, it's great, and if you don't get it out, you can still do okay. It's not a deck that relies just on Sunbird's Invocation, but one of the combos with this deck is that if you can get Sunbird's Invocation out, you can actually cast Approach, and then you can get to your next approach, which is insane. Casting an approach, and then you reveal the top 7 cards of your deck, and then if you see another approach with it, you can actually cast the approach. You can cast 2 approaches. Additionally, if you cast a Kama, you get to look at the top 9 cards of your deck. You may cast any of those, basically. I think if you cast Spring, you'd actually be able to cast any 9-drop from your deck, and I could be wrong. I don't fully know how this would work, but with a Sunbird's Invocation out, if you cast Spring, you might be able to look at the top 9. Don't quote me on that, though. But there's a reason why Sunbird's Invocation is in this deck. It's not a card I just want to cut, because the amount of synergy once you get that card out is insane. And even if you don't get it out, I feel like there's a lot of board states where you can just settle Hour of Dev, Carnage Tyrant, start using your approaches, Zakama. I think it would take the casting spell of the spell you actually cast. Let's just look at it real quick, because I do want to see. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the X... Oh, are you talking about... You're talking about Spring to Mind. But I do want to read this anyway. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's CMC. You may cast a card revealed this way with CMC less than... With CMC X or less without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't think it works that way, but I think that's okay. I think it's okay. I don't think you need to have it work that way. Because anytime you cast a Hour of Devastation, you can just get an Hour of Promise, you know, or you can get more ramp. It's kind of weird, because say you cast Hour of Devastation, can you hit Spring to Mind? I don't think so. Because Spring to Mind will have a CMC of 9 in that case. So it's kind of confusing. But anyway, you can still cast Carnage Tyrants into Carnage Tyrants. You can still cast Carnage Tyrants into Sunbird's Invocations. You can still cast Carnage Tyrants into Immortal Suns, or Approaches into Immortal Suns. Like, you guys see how cascading this can get. And that's why it's so top-heavy. The reason it's so top-heavy is that I think that I'm gaining this life, and if I can just rely on Settle and Hour to just get me there, or if I can rely on Hour of Promise to get me there, it might be good. I think if the theory behind this deck does not hold true, I could always cut Immortal Sun and maybe the treasure maps and just add a couple cuts, you know? 3 cuts to sort of stave off early plays. If this deck does indeed turn out to be too expensive, I can tone it down and have cut in there. And I think cut would function pretty well with Sunbird's Invocation. It also functions really well when you have like 20-something mana open. I do really like Treasure Map, and Shaolin, you were saying that you were you didn't say that you were meh on Treasure Map, but you said that you wanted us to sell you, and I think I figured out why I like it so much. You're not just scrying. You're not just drawing cards. You're doing both, and you're getting ramp. 3 scry triggers, you get a land, and you can draw cards from it. I think that is why Treasure Map is good. It's not the fact that it scries, it's not the fact that it draws you cards, it's not the fact that it turns into a land, it's the fact that it does all 3. You just get 3 scries with this, you get another land out, which is important, especially for a deck like this. Getting another land out just by, you know, scrying a bunch of times, I think that's really good. And that's why I'm hesitant to put Cut instead of Treasure Map into the deck, because as much as Cut increases the ceiling of this deck and allows you to do even more broken things should you get into these board states, I think that Treasure Map gives you sort of a safety net where you can just ramp with it and get scries in, make sure you hit land drops. You don't even have to use your treasures to draw cards with them. You could just use your treasures to cast an approach or cast a Zakama or cast a Sunbirds. So you do have a treasure economy with it that I think is pretty good. And I really like this card on turn 2. Like, I feel like you're really able to do things. Like, you can get your approach out a little bit faster, too. Your Ipnu Rivulet can get approach out faster. Your Mines can get approach out faster. Your Arch of Araska can get approach out faster. 3 treasure map is real. I really don't want to cut an approach. That's the one problem, is because if I cut an approach, then my Sunbird's Invocation approach line is a lot less effective. Because now, instead of an approach being like every 20 cards or so in a 60 card deck, it would be every 15 cards or so, it would be every 20 cards. When I have only 3 Approach of the Second Suns, it's once every 20 cards. When I have 4, it's once every 15. And what that means is that Sunbird's Invocation, when you cast Approach, sometimes you just win on the spot. You play Sunbird's Invocation and you play Approach and you just win because you get another Approach. And even if you're not able to do that, even if you miss your approach with that, you'll be closer to it. You'll be 7 cards closer to your approach, you know? Reveal the top 7. If you don't hit your approach, those all go to the bottom. And you're probably going to hit an Hour of Dev. You're probably going to hit an Hour of Promise. You're probably going to hit a Carnage Tyrant. You'll hit something. Just because you might miss your approach, you'll still hit something. But I really want the RNG to be the highest that it can be in my favor whenever I spin the wheel with Sunbird's Invocation. I want my wheel spinning to have 4 approaches when I spin the wheel for that combo. The one card this deck is missing that his deck has is Fumigate. If I could run more Fumigates, I think the life gain would really tip this deck over the top and make it not just good, but great. I think this deck would become great. Because once you're able to Fumigate and just gain life and start stabilizing, like say I have Hour of Dev and Fumigate, you know? Then it starts to really become a force. But I still think you have 4 sweepers and you have 4 settles, so I don't think it's easy to kill you. Did you mention the power of the zombies? Yeah, the zombies can do things too. Especially if you're up against a control deck. They may actually feel pressured to do something about your Hour of Promise. Like, they need to use removal spells on it. And that's kind of why I like Immortal Sun, because not only does it stop Vraskas in their track, like say you're facing a Super Friends deck, it also gives your zombies +1/+1. It makes everything you cast 1 less to cast. Approach decks, which rely on as the main win con, just play 3, but Ninja wants 4. Well, here's the thing. You say that, and that is blue-white approach. This is Naya approach. And I hereby decree that in my Naya approach with Sunbird's Invocation, I want the RNG to be at its absolute highest when I cast Approach of the Second Sun. Because that's where it's at its highest. You get this approach out with your Sunbird's Invoke, you can just win the game instantly. Instantly. If they don't have that counter spell, it's really good. Zakama is a really nice curve topper because they are going to be putting pressure on you. It's not like they're going to have nothing out. Like, once you get the Zakama out, he's going to have targets. Is casting Approach off a flipped Primal Amulet? Let's see. Is casting Approach off a flipped Primal an instant win? I think so, but I don't really have as many instants or sorceries as I'd like. If I wanted to go for that deck, I would have to cut the Zakamas, I'd have to cut the Carnage Tyrants. The ramp doesn't actually count because those are instants and sorceries. With 25 CMC or more expense cards, you have a 75% chance of starting hand. You will have 2 or more. Let's see, it was 20 plus 5 CMC or more expensive cards. You have 75% chance that in starting hand you will have 2 or more. You guys might disagree with me, but look, I saw firsthand Chris Patel, and if you don't believe me, I encourage you guys to check out the results. Chris Botello went 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, and 3-2. Most of those which were competitive queues. I think it was 3 4-1s and 1 3-2. And I know he has access to Fumigate, which makes his deck better. But at the same time, I think you guys are wrong. I think you guys are not looking at the results that have been displayed. And I am a big fan of this deck because it does work. It might not pivot well enough without Fumigate, though, and that is the one issue with the deck. You might just need to have Fumigate and Hour of Devastation to make it work, and if you're talking that, maybe you're right. If that is your argument, maybe you're right. But you get 3 land out, you have 26 land, so getting 3 land out isn't actually the hardest thing in the world. And that's why Treasure Map is there. Treasure Map is to become a land, and you're saying that I have to rely on Hour of Dev. I can also rely on Carnage Tyrant. I can also rely on Hour of Promise. I can rely on other cards to buy me time. I get zombies from Hour of Promise. I get a 7/6 body, which, by the way, Hour of Devastation does not kill your own Carnage Tyrant. Your Carnage Tyrant survives your own nukes, which is a pretty cool synergy. Your Ipnu Rivulets, they will get your approaches closer. Like, there's a lot of little synergies in this deck that are a big reason as to why it went 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, and 3-2. And I realize it looks bad on paper. I'm not gonna say it does look janky. And I am not the type of person who will just endorse a deck with this many 6-drops and 7-drops unless I think it might work. I wouldn't show this to you guys if I thought it would just flunk and fall on its face every single game that I play it. I saw firsthand that this deck does work, but it might be due to Fumigate. I'm not saying it isn't. And there's cards that I can substitute. I could just use Slaughter the Strong, you know? I could just use a bunch of Slaughter the Strongs instead of something else, you know? I could cut Tyrant, hypothetically, but that does make spinning the wheel with Sunbird a lot worse. Your Sunbird wheel spinning is going to get reduced. I feel the meta in the higher ranks will be mono red, and approach possibly best rate prior to Rix. Well, that is prior to Rix. I know that Rampaging Ferocidon had a big impact, and if Ferocidon is a card still, maybe this deck won't quite do it against that deck, you know? Rampaging Ferocidon is a good card. You heard it here first. But yeah, Naya approach. It is brewery. This is not... This is a brew. This is someone that I saw use this and go completely ham with it. I think approach might be a card you could cut. You might be able to cut... I'm sorry, not approach. Immortal Sun. I think Immortal Sun for one more treasure map might be a good idea, because then you're going to be curving into turn 2 treasure map a lot more frequently. And I think that is not bad. I think Bant Approach standard list is almost there, we just don't have Fumigate. I still think Hour of Dev is a good card, though. Just because we don't have Fumigate, Hour of Devastation is pretty good. You can nuke Planeswalkers, you can kill Adanto Vanguards. This card's no joke either. It's not quite a Fumigate where you're going to gain a ton of life, but at least you're gaining your life off of your Gift of Paradise. You're gaining your life off your approach. So if you get up to Zakama and they have a big board, Zakama will also gain you life. And I think those reasons might make this deck viable. Just all the life gain that you can get. The fact that you can hold open settles. The biggest concern I have running this deck is that people do know how to play around Settle the Wreckage. It's not like they're just going to swing in with all their creatures. And you could get into a board state where you're missing Hour of Devastation. You could get into a board state where you're missing Hour of Devastation and Settle the Wreckage. It's kind of awkward to hold up every turn. You know, you have to hold up your Settle every turn, and that might get awkward. Twitch crashed. Am I not online? A little confused, because I am still seeing myself as online. You're worrying me, Shard. You're putting worry into my brain. I still see myself online. You hit 9 creatures with Settle last night. Whew, crashed for you. Okay. You will need early removal. Then, alright, you say that I will need early removal, then why didn't Chris Patello need early removal? Is it because of Settle the Wreckage? He had 7 sweepers, right? And I can try to find his deck for you guys, but no, I don't really feel like pulling his deck list up. But it is essentially the same thing as this, but you're running Fumigates. You're running more Fumigates and more Hour of Devs. And that's a big probably, Hellion. I know you say it's probably the most played deck, but what if we don't have access to... let's just go to the card real quick, to Ramunap Ruins and Rampaging Ferocidon. Will it still be most played? Will it still be on the same power level? It's not like I have to deal with Bomat Courier. It's not like I have to deal with Pianalar. Like, there's a lot of cards in red. It's not like I have to deal with any vehicles that red might want to use if they want to go the vehicle route. Fumigate has the life gain. I agree, Cardboard Nomad. Here are cards that you could consider using, and I'll just pull them up. I think he actually had a positive net result against red deck wins, and I could be wrong about that. Everything they've said tells us that Ferocidon and Ruins. Yeah, we are in speculation territory. I don't want to say if it's going to be banned or not. It is a big if. We don't know. But if you guys don't believe in this list, there are cards that you can use. And I'll show them. Let's see. Sweltering Suns is one of them. So, because I don't have access to Fumigate, you could make the argument that instead of going for Settle the Wreckage, I could just go for 4 Sweltering Suns. What do you think of that? Do you think that instead of 4 Settle, that 4 Sweltering Suns would be better? Because that is another sort of thing that I can go for if I don't have Fumigate. Another card that I could go for, Slaughter the Strong. That is another sweeper-like effect. I could just run 4 Cut to Ribbons and try to cut combo, you know? I could just do this. And this is assuming that it doesn't work. You guys are assuming that it doesn't work, and maybe you're right. I'm not saying you're right, and I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying that there are cards you can switch. The Immortal Sun might be a little too over the top if Planeswalkers aren't a thing. So maybe you can cut 1 Immortal Sun, you know, and add in 1 Sweltering Suns. I am willing to buy that argument. I think the game will go decently. We just have to see how the meta shapes up. Yeah. I think this can curve out decently if you just rely on your treasure maps and your springs and your 26 land mana base. I think there's definitely a portion of games where this can curve, and I don't think it's a small portion. I think it's a larger portion. Yeah, I can also see that, Shard. I think if you're not curving into your 3rd land, you might just lose. I think at the bare minimum, you need 3 lands and a Gift of Paradise or a Spring to really go for it. Can you do some playtesting? Yeah, that's a good idea, Shard. I don't think I want to use Abrade and Lightning Strike because those are very cheap. And I feel like hitting Lightning Strike off your Sunbirds is kind of meh. Like, I'd much rather hit a Sweltering Suns off my Sunbirds or a Slaughter the Strong. But yeah, let's do some hand tests. I think that's a good idea. Because this is a deck that we really need to... First of all, I need to name it. So before I do anything else, let me at least name the deck. What do I even want to call this? Naya WinCons? Naya win cons. That's a good description. Because there's Carnage Tyrant, there's Approach, there's Akama, Sunbirds. There's a lot of different like ways you can win games with this deck. Okay. Now how do I do hand tests? I need to remember. Here we go. Playtest. Alright, do I want to mulligan this? I think I want to risk it. Let's just play the Sun Petal Grove. Hopefully we're on the draw. Sheltered Thicket. Spring's coming in next turn. So, how do I do this? Do I just need to make sure that I'm just going to pretend I have one more land. So I actually have 5 land right now. Right, 5 land is out currently. I cast Hour of Promise. I get 2 deserts, so I don't actually have I don't have the zombies because there's no deserts, but I get 2 deserts out. I'm at 7 mana right now. 7 mana. And what is it? Turn 5? Going into turn 5? I have another Hour of Promise. Now I get to decide, do I want an Immortal Sun? Do I need to stabilize with Carnage Tyrant? Or do I slam Sunbirds and just go even more ham? I probably need to cast Carnage Tyrant at this point. They may have pressured me enough. This is, what, turn 5? Where we would be in the game. So that is risky. Maybe, like I could cast Sunbirds, and if they don't have me on lethal for the next turn, I get to cast Carnage Tyrant, reveal the top 6 cards of my deck, and probably play a sweeper. So let's assume they don't have lethal. I play Sunbirds Invoke, draw a card. I get Hour of Devastation anyway. Not using the turn indicators. How do you use... Oh. Wait, where's the turn indicator? Is this the turn indicator? I guess I'm not quite as experienced as Monk with this. But anyway, I cast Carnage Tyrant, or I can cast Hour of Dev. Now imagine Merfolk or Red Deck win. Then it counts your turns. So I reveal the top 5. If they beat me on turn 5, then sure, Alien. That is true. If they beat me on turn 5, that is a good point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I guess casting Hour of Dev was a wrong reason. I didn't think I would draw another Hour of Dev because I just cast it. So it would have been better to cast Carnage Tyrant into Hour of Dev, but that's okay. Anyway, let's reset. Let's try again. This hand's pretty garbage, but I think I need to keep it and just hope that I draw land. Yeah, maybe instead of Settle, I can run Settle as a sideboard card, and I think I like that more. So instead of Settle, I have 4 Sweltering Suns, which also cycles. I think that this is a good idea. You think Slaughter? I don't know which I like more, Settle or Slaughter. Sweltering Suns does work, though, and you can also cycle it, which is nice. Oops, this is in the sideboard, that's why it's not showing up main deck. I think this is a better argument. I think you're right. I think I'm supposed to board in Settle. I think Settle is a 4 of sideboard when you're facing Scarab Gods. You can always use Settle as a 4 of, or any control deck that doesn't have as many win cons. Settle can just hose that deck. But now I'm at least in a board state where I can go Sweltering Suns in addition to Hour of Dev. I'd cut 1 Settle. I don't think you're supposed to be cutting these Hour Devs. I love having 8, because here's the thing. I don't have spot removal. And because I don't have spot removal, I need to rely on sweepers. And I think having 8 sweepers is important when you don't have spot removal, you know? You have to rely on sweepers to win. And therefore, you can also rely on Zakama. Like, say you just get Zakama out on the top end, you can just burn a bunch of stuff. I do think that you need 8 sweepers. Because I don't have Cut, I don't have Lightning Strike. There's a lot that I don't have. You think Immortal Sun out? What would you replace it with, Cardboard Nomad? I kind of like Immortal Sun because it makes everything cheaper. Mathematically, 8 is the right number of cards you need to see every game. Eugenides agrees. And I like that now that I don't have Settle, I can just force them. Like they don't have to play around Settle, and that's part of what makes Settle so bad, is that they can play around it. It's harder to play around a Sweltering Suns. By the time you hit your top end, you should win regardless, right? It's kind of in there. It's a very multifaceted card. Players can't activate Planeswalker abilities. That just hoses down friends. At the beginning of your draw step, the card draw is pretty cool. Spells you cost are 1 less to cast. That's very relevant in this deck. Is this a Nombo combo with Sunbird's Invocation? Do I reveal the top X -1 because of Immortal Sun? Like, say you have both Immortal Sun and Sunbird's Invocation out. No, it would still take their CMC into account, so it wouldn't actually be a Nombo combo. I kind of like the fact that my zombies turn into 3/3s and that my Carnage Tyrants turn into 8/7s, and I feel like that's relevant. But maybe you're right. I kind of like it, though. It's weird. It's a weird card, but I think this is the kind of deck where it thrives in. How does this deal with a resolved Gideon of the Trials that has some time to tick up? Your Carnage Tyrant would have to kill him. You'd have to cast Carnage Tyrant and then cast Hour of Devastation and then kill Gideon. I think you can deal with that. Because that's why Carnage Tyrant is in there. He's the beatdown. And as long as you get this combo, Hour of Dev, Carnage Tyrant, you can kill Gideon of the Trials. And if you have Sunbird's Invocation, it makes it easier to sort of get into these board states. But let's do some more test hands, because I think I did improve the deck. I think that is just a straight-up improvement. Sweltering Suns over Settle. So let's do one more playtest. Mountain. Okay. I guess I'll do this for the counter to keep track of what turn it is. Draw a card. Rootbound Crag. Draw a card. Rootbound Crag. I have a choice. I do have a choice. Do I want to ramp, or am I under enough pressure where Sweltering Suns has to be cast? I don't think I'm under enough pressure. Obviously, this depends on the board state. So let's just put a counter right here that I have 1 extra land. Oh man, I totally lost track of what turn it was. That didn't last very long, Shaolin. That did not last very long at all. I'm sorry. But let's draw another card. We have 5 land out, right? 5 land. Now we can cast Sweltering Suns, wipe up the board. You missed the counter, and there's literally a button called Next Turn. Well, yeah. Hey, I can't get everything perfect. Instead of draw card, use Next Turn. Oh, really? Oh, that's what I missed. Okay, you guys can punt me. I didn't even see that. I was just hitting draw a card. One for Search Library, too? Really? Where's the Search Library one? Oh, yeah. Wow. Thank you, guys. Alright, let's reset. I think I curved pretty well there. Reading buttons, explained buttons, yes. No, that was a pretty good curve, though. Like, Sweltering Sun, Spring, Sunbird's Invocation coming out. Let's try it again. That's 3 good curves in a row. You guys got to give me credit. Let's reset. Is this going to curve out? Yes, because I have Spring to mind. So, alright, next turn, as Shaolin is pointing out. I'm gonna have to use... No, I don't have to use life for Ipnu Refuel. That's fine. Alright, so... Played Rootbound Crag. Next turn. I don't think it matters too much what I do here. I could go for Sweltering Suns. No, I can't. I need double red. I need double red before I can go to Sweltering Suns. So let's just cast Spring. Search the library for a mountain. Of which there is one in here, guys. There is a mountain in this deck. Somewhere there is a mountain. Oh, goodness. There it is. Alright. Next turn. Draw another forest. I can cast this forest now, and my Sun Petal Grove comes in untapped. I presume that by this point in the game, I need to Sweltering Suns to clean up the board. Getting a little awkward because I need a 6-drop. I'm drawing all my 7-drops. So we just have to take a turn off, unfortunately. But hopefully we've wiped up enough of the board with Sweltering Suns where it doesn't matter. I probably need to cast an approach here. Assuming they haven't put enough pressure on me, I'm obviously going to go for Sunbirds, but I think approach is probably right in most board states. I'm not going to figure out how to put approach 6 cards from the top, as much as you guys might want me to. That's not going to happen. Let's just pretend that in 6 draw steps I get an approach. Okay. This might not curve out, but then again, I'm getting very close to Zakama at least. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It might be too slow. I'll give it one more draw. I cast Sunbirds. Sweltering Suns. I get to look at the top 3. I get to wipe the board up a bit. Get the Scavenger Grounds up. Let's just draw these. Can I do that? Okay, I get a treasure map out. Let's put these back in. I can put them back in. That's cool. And then shuffle the library and draw a card. Sun Petal Grove. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can cast the Kama at this point. Untap all my lands. I don't know if that wins, but I am showing that at least you do curve out. Let's try it again. I'm having fun with this. Thank you for the idea, Sharda. I don't know why, but it didn't cross my mind to do this. Okay. Let's do another game. This looks pretty good. Next turn. I get to Spring. Next turn. Cast Spring. You get one more land out. What do I want to get out? I'll get green out because of Carnage Tyrant, I think. I think that I need to get a forest. Shuffle the library. Next turn, I can either cast Hour of Promise or... I think that's my only play. So I gotta cast Hour of Promise. I did punt, by the way. I should have played this Desert of the Fervent at an earlier turn, because if I play Desert of the Fervent, then that means that Hour of Promise gets 2 zombies out. So if you want to punt me, Shard, feel free to. Actually, no, don't punt me, because I can play the Desert of the Fervent now, and now I can cast Hour of Promise. I get my 2 zombies out, so don't punt me. I get 2 lands, any lands I want, by the way. So let's look for some lands that are relevant. They have to both be deserts in this case. I'm just going to get... Deserts do enter tapped. That's true, yes. You're right, Hallian, that is true. If we gain access to... So that's a punt on my part, right? That was a punt on how I played it. I should have played Desert earlier. I should have played Desert on turn 1. You are right, Hellion. I would not be able to to play it. But if I had sequenced that better, it wouldn't have been a punt, you know? If I had sequenced this properly and cast Desert of the Fervent on a better turn, it wouldn't have happened that way. But that's okay. We make punts. And that's why I'm hoping that Raminop Ruins can make the cut in my deck, so I don't have a tapped red land. But anyway, let's just assume that I tapped this better and that I didn't play Desert of the Fervent at that horrible turn. And that I have 2 lands out, because I could have sequenced that better. And we live in a world where I'm not in an actual game, and I can go for such lines. Um, so what do I want? I don't remember what these lands do off the top of my head. Is Shafet Dunes the one that exiles? No, that's the wrong one. What's the one that exiles yards? Let's see. There's so many cards in this deck. That's the problem. I always forget. Is it Scattered Groves? I don't think so. I think that's a cycle land. Scavenger Grounds. It's Scavenger Grounds. That's the one I meant to get the first time around. So I get these two lands out. Yeah, Scavenging Grounds. Hallion's on it. Yep. And now I'm in a board state where I have 2 zombies to protect myself with, and I also have 7 mana. I can either... Let's shuffle our library. I can either go for... Ooh, interesting. Look at this. I get to go for Gift of Paradise plus an Hour of Promise. Yeah, let's do that. Let's Gift of Paradise our forest, because we don't want Field of Ruin to destroy target non-basic land. So let's gain 3 life. I know we've probably taken damage by this point, but we do have zombies that can protect ourselves. With that 3 mana, let's see, 3 mana, enchant this. I have 5 mana open still. Let's cast another Hour of Promise. Get 2 more zombies, and get 2 more lands. At this point in the game, I want to get an Arch of Araska, because I already have 3 deserts, and Arch of Araska can start drawing me cards every turn. I can also get... What does Scattered Groves do? Let's just see. Okay, that's just a random land I don't care about. But I got 2 lands out. And how much am I at now? I have 4 zombies. I am at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 land. That makes the comma possible next turn. Let's shuffle our library again, draw a card. I kind of just want to play Zakama and Tyrant, or maybe Zakama and I hold open 9 mana and wipe up a bunch of things. That's probably good. By the way, guys, I don't know if you know this, but if you have 12 or 15 mana, what you should do is tap all 12 mana, and then Zakama will untap it, and you'll have a lot of floating mana available. How do I deal with Phoenixes, Planeswalkers, and Glorybringer? The way that I deal with Glorybringer, I'll go into the deck editor. I guess I could deal with Phoenixes with Zakama, but let's see. Naya, win cons. I think I would need to board in a Settle to deal with Phoenix in particular. Glorybringer, I just need to survive. I need to survive an Hour of Dev. Planeswalkers, I do have an Immortal Sun in there. Hour of Devastation also does hit Planeswalkers. Carnage Tyrant hits Planeswalkers. Yeah, you do need to rely on Settle. If I was facing Gruul monsters, this might be a bad matchup without Fumigate. But I can at least get in Settles to deal with Phoenix. And maybe I don't need Approach to win, or maybe I don't need Carnage Tyrant to win. Like, say I'm facing Naya monsters, there is an argument where I can just take out Carnage Tyrant, you know, and then just win with Approach. I think that's what I would do. Ixalan's Binding. That's a good one, Ixalan's Binding. I like that suggestion. I'll throw that in the sideboard. But, yeah, that pretty much, I think that's going to sum up the deck tech. There's still a whole different sideboard that I have to build. Clearly I don't have it perfect, as Hellion is pointing out some flaws of the deck. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think it's better than people are giving it credit for. On the surface, I completely understand. This deck looks like garbage. It looks super expensive. But through that playtesting, I was actually drawing a lot of lands. Like, it was ramping out pretty good, you know? Like, the land that I was getting, it's not like I had any bad curves there. They all curved out. The question is, am I still alive? That's the question. It can also be horrible in the wrong meta. Maybe. I don't know. It would take testing to see how this pairs up against red deck wins, or Naya monsters, or Gruul monsters. It's not like I just know the answers to these questions. You have to test it for yourself to see how it does. I was pretty surprised by how Chris Patella was using a deck very similar to this. He was able to actually pivot against those decks. I'm not saying this one can, but I think with 4 Sweltering and 4 Hour of Devs, I think that can help because you're not running spot removal. You're just running cards that sweep up the board. And yeah, I think you just have to sideboard out these Tyrants. I think that's how you approach aggro decks, right? Because Tyrant's a big clunky card. I don't think you want him against red deck wins or against Gruul monsters. I think you need to have Settle the Wreckage in there. And I think it's a good sideboard swap. Like I think you're able to handle that deck pretty effectively. I like normal approach versus red deck wins in a best of 1 environment. Could be right. At the same time, if I cast the Kama, I can also gain 9 life, you know? You do get to try and live dreams. Dreams can be lived with this deck. And it's not easy to live them, but I think based on the sample hands that I was getting, it's not like I wasn't curving out. Like I was able to live the plans that I had set. I was able to go for certain lines that deal with whatever board state I'm facing, which is very important. If you're able to react to all these different board states, and maybe those decks are too fast, but if they miss a beat, if they stumble at all, I feel like I can catch them. Because my deck is the one that draws tons of lands and has tons of sweepers. If they stumble, whoo, man, those Hour Devastations are going to hit that much harder. It's a little janky, but I think it's good. I think it might not be tier 1, but it might be an outlier tier 1. I think that's a fair thing to say. Outlying tier 1 at a bare minimum and has potential to be better than that based on how the meta shapes up. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to play around with it for yourself. One problem with Arena is we're not going to be able to play with this, probably because all of the rares that are involved, but that's kind of a discussion for another time. I'm talking purely theoretical in how this match would match up against the best possible decks you can create in the meta. You think I don't need Tyrants in the main deck? You could be right. You could be right. I could replace them with Settles. At the same time, though, my Immortal Sun gets a lot worse without Tyrant. I know that Scarab God decks are pretty popular, and they love to run 4 Vraska's Contempt, so having something that just doesn't care about Vraska's Contempt seems pretty good. I don't know. I feel like Carnage Tyrant is pretty good. If the meta is aggressive enough, you could just run 4 main deck Settles instead. It really depends on the matchup, right? There's definitely matchups where Carnage Tyrant is going to be better. You could use some Compasses. I'm lukewarm to Compasses. The problem with Compass is that it does require significant mana to utilize to get that land every turn. Although, then again, last game I was getting the lands anyway. You could be right. Compass is a definite suggestion. I'll throw it in the sideboard. Not as a sideboard, but as a suggestion. I'm not going to discount that idea. It seems pretty good. I do like Treasure Map, though. I like the scries that I get from Treasure Map. I like that Treasure Map gives me an actual land after I scry 3 times. And I like the fact that I get 3 treasures that I can either use to draw cards or cast Zakamas or approaches. I don't know. That's another thing that we'd have to test, right, Hellion? We just don't know until you stick your feet in the mud and start to, we start to see what works and what doesn't. Will Thematic Compass work? I think you could get it to work. But you're gonna have to test, and that's part of what I'm doing. I'm just throwing out theories. I'm throwing out decks that I think might have a chance, and I think this deck has a chance for sure. I don't think this is garbage. I'm actually very excited to start playing around with this. I hope that it turns out to be good. I really do. And I think there's a good chance it will, especially based on those sample hands. It seemed like it was doing what I wanted it to do. But no, maybe Thematic Compass is better than Treasure Map. I don't know. I kind of like the utility of Treasure Map. It just does a lot. I like that you can search for Arch of Araska with Hour of Promise and just never miss like extra cards. I think that's pretty cool. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. But I think that's about it for the deck tech. It was a lot longer than my normal deck techs because there was a lot to talk about. When you have all these different deserts in a deck and all these different interactions you have to consider, then it does make the deck tech a lot longer. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found something that you might want to think about or maybe brew towards. I know it's in consideration of a deck that I might want to brew towards. Even if it's not tier 1, I think in terms of fun, it's tier 1 in my heart. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to try to raid CGB because I've never raided someone before. So if you're here and you want to head on over to CGB's channel, I encourage you guys to say Ninja Raid or something. And yeah, that's about it for today. I will be streaming again at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow to finish my color reviews for Amonkhet. And thank you guys for watching. Take care.